Joining me on the program next is a security consultant and China's television election security consultant, Mr. Dr. Kabiru Adamu. Thank you so much, Doc, for joining us tonight.
My pleasure.
How does that come to you, though? The ruling over Ebube-Agu, the Southeast security outfit?
Well, one of the things that we've been monitoring in the last few weeks are rulings by the court that would have an impact on the election. So not surprising, frankly, given recent rulings by the court. And it's something that we've been monitoring because we know last year there was a suit filed by, I think, the PDP, regarding the activities of Ebube-Agu and the possibility that such a ruling would happen before the elections was high.
I mean, so you dissect for us the situation in Ebonyi State, because with the little of the facts that are coming out of the court room on that matter, it does look like there was a specific scenario in that state relating to the security outfit.
So over a period, that particular security outfit has been accused of human rights abuses, not just in Ebonyi State, but in Imo State, and then I think in Enugu State as well. So over time, we've seen instances where the communities have risen against the action of that particular group. Now recall that since the governor changed parties, there have also been concerns regarding the use of non-state apparatus, especially state-level creations. In fact, in one instance, the Inspector General of Police has come out categorically to declare them as illegal. And so any party, as an example, that wants to provide an environment where it can, exercise its, campaign activities freely, would want to have such state apparatus outside. So in the case of Ebonyi State, especially given the position of the state government and the fact that the governor has decamped into another party, the opposition parties seem to be interested in making sure that state-level security structure is not in existence, is not operational during the elections. Unfortunately, that is one key element that we're going into these elections, the existence of this non-state structures, state-level structures that are not recognized by the Constitution. Sadly, apart from this court ruling, there are several other states where these structures exist that may impact the elections.
Isn't this one of the fears of the proponents, or those who oppose state policing, the possibility of political interference?
Well, in the case of Ebonyi, that is not what we've seen. Yes, there were human rights abuses, but there were no evidence that those human rights abuses were geared towards obtaining
political gains.
A political gain. Unlike what we're seeing in other places like Lagos, as an example, where other non-state actors, not necessarily now state-level, apparatus, are being used to suppress political activities by the opposition. That's not the case in Ebonyi. It was a pure case of human rights abuse. So, in one way, you can call it the excesses of state structures, such as the one in Ebonyi, as an example.
Let's look at it more critically. The establishment or the ideas of regional security outfit like Ebube-Agu, like we're seeing in the southwest region of the country, where there is a security outfit agreed upon by the governors in the region, hoping that this will help them to drill down into the communities to fight crimes and criminality. If you look at the Ebube-Agu, the Southeast network that the governors also have agreed on, basically a self-help mechanism by the governors in fighting those instances of violence and criminality. Give us an idea of what could be the implication of this court ruling.
Let's start from looking at the national security architecture. In summary, there are gaps that exist within the national security architecture. So the farther you go from the city centers, the more you see these gaps. The presence of security forces are extremely thin in our rural communities. Now, because they're extremely thin, non-state actors and other threat elements take advantage of these gaps and perpetrate the kind of insecurity challenges that we have within the country. Now, most communities, states, communities, have evolved structures to block those gaps. Now, in the case of the Southeast, the governors came together and agreed to, replicate what the Southwest did. And so Ebube-Agu was brought it. And in most of them, there were legislative pronouncements at the state level by the state assemblies in those states that back the creations of this level. So now that the court has ruled, even though it's not my 440, it's not I'm not a lawyer, but it creates a challenge. Now there is a state legislation that has created this movement, and the court has, ruled that they're banned or they're illegal. However, the reason for their creation has not been taken care of. But the good news, I think, for us as Nigerians is that almost all, at least the 4 major candidates that are heading into the elections on February 25th, all are in one way or the other supporting the creation of state police. So even though this is different in terms of the fact that these are legislations at the state level, it may not mean the same thing as state police. But going forward, it means that post-February 2025, and when the new government will be sworn in May, we may see a Nigeria that would have some level of state policing, maybe different from this. But for now, suffice to say that this ruling has created a gap that the state attempted to block as a result of these vulnerabilities that exist within the national architecture.
Now, so there is, and I asked about the implication, to further that question is the larger implication on the election. Elections are just few weeks away, or a few days away, just about 10, 11 days away. So does that have any direct correlation or impact? Could it have any impact on the election?
Definitely. There is a conspiracy theory going around in the Southeast, the so-called unknown gunmen. The conspiracy theory ties the activities of the unknown gunmen as a creation of the federal structure. Now, the security eco-space is being occupied by these 2 levels. The federal level, which has, as you know, about 27 different security departments. Now, the state level has come up with another structure to occupy spaces that are not being occupied by these several structures. Now, a court has removed that state level. Now, the conspiracy theory is going to expand to the extent that the removal of that state level structure now allows the federal structure to continue, the agenda within this conspiracy theory. And that's how we're going into the elections. Don't forget the permutations, and I'm sure you are a better authority than me in that regard. The permutation regarding 25% in each of the states. The more the space is open, the more those type of discussions would occur. So this would have significant consequences. What is unclear is whether that court ruling affects only Ebonyi state or it extends to the other state within the Southeast region, the 4 other states. I haven't seen the full details of the court.
We've not been able to extract, because that judgment, just a little information is coming out of the courtroom on that the ruling of the court, and we've not been able to extract as much information, and one will need those information to be able to sit on the fact of the matter. But preliminary facts coming shows that the court ruled that there was a disbandment of the security outfit, and part of the reasons was issues of rights abuses. Now, and I would like to know, looking into the 2023 elections, which is just a few days away, we saw yesterday what President Buhari did with the IG of police, new equipment, although that was supposed to be a police civil community kind of gadgets to in case of any civil unrest and all of that. But generally, we had discussion about the Nigerian landscape and the security architecture ahead of the election. would you say that the Nigerian police force is ready for this election, from what you can see?
As the lead agency in charge of internal security within the country, I would say it has done a lot to prepare itself for election security management. It is a critical member of the Interagency Consultative Committee on Election Security, and as far back as early 2022, it started with several preparations. It held a retreat, a seminar, I think it was in Imo State, if I remember well, in Owerri. Before that, it held several regional seminars and retreats where it brought together its senior management to come up with what it called its STA, Security Threat Assessment, for the different locations. So to that extent, one would say the police is prepared. But the police is just one element within the ecospace for election.
But they are the lead in the
management. Yeah. They are the lead. But the role they play, despite the fact that that role is critical, it is not the only role. Point I'm trying to make is every security agency, department within the government plays a role in election security management. And I'll give you an example. The immigration as an example. If the borders are not well manned, and illegal, what we call aliens, an example, come into the country and perpetrate some acts of criminality, no matter how good the police is, that effort would be made futile. The second component is the military, as an example. So I would rather discuss the role of all the security departments, especially within this platform of the Interagency Consultative Committee on Election Security, and then the role of INEC as the facilitator of this excess. I think that way we would have a better approach that would be able to manage the risk, because let's not forget that this risk, they are manifest and they are dynamic, they are transient. What was risk yesterday may not be risk today. So discussing the police isolated from excess, I think would not really help election security management. So yes, they are prepared, but more importantly, I would like to see a holistic election security management plan that takes into the consideration the role of each and every member of excess, so that all of this risk, at the last time we counted the risk, we counted almost about 79 of such risk.
Wow.
And for you to treat each of this risk, it would take more than the police. It would require a whole of government approach. And sadly, just 10 days before the elections, I haven't seen that election security management plan coming out of excess. I'm hoping that it's there. It's just that they've not made it public, because in their mandate, when I went through their mandate, there is a part of the mandate that required them to create such an STA that would have 3 levels of risk: the high level, the medium level, and the low level. Unfortunately, I haven't seen that. I'm hoping it exists, it's just that I haven't seen it.
I know that recently you released the Beacon Intel Security Report. That was for the last quarter of 2022. And looking at that report, I read carefully, showed we could glean a few things ahead of the election that can help us ahead of the election. A few issues on the kind of violent and insecurity situation that we have had around the country in that quarter. Give us a sense of what you found out in that quarter that will be of help for our viewers tonight, in summary of the situation across the country in that report.
So what we did was we collect data of different security events. Then we analyze that data, and then out of it we produce that report. That report actually contained the last quarter, and then for the whole year 2022. So just to give you a sense, 11,000 Nigerians were killed in 2022. And for the
Say that again.
11,000 Nigerians were killed in 2022. Sadly, the fatality figure for the number of persons that were killed was around 11,000.
So this included northeast insurgency, banditry,
the whole of the country,
the whole of the country,
exactly.
And court clashes and any kind of
exactly. The only thing,
so this is relating to crime, violence,
security incidents, not safety incidents.
Okay,
so
okay.
not
fire,
dead from fire,
yeah.
from flood, from accidents, road travel accidents, and things like that. Now, the interesting thing is the dimension of and the distribution of these figures, rather. About 80% of these 11,000 happened in the northern part of the country. So if you break it down again, Zamfara State, Katsina State and Borno State, as well as Kaduna, had the highest figures if you go state by state level. And one thing that was common in all of these states is the activities of non-state armed groups. Now,
was he on the increase?
Yes, it was on the increase, sadly. And that is what worried us. We are going into an elections where we're seeing non-state armed groups challenging the supremacy of the use of force by the state, and almost with a wanton abandon. Now, sadly, the speed with which these non-state armed groups were spreading within the country ahead of the elections was also worrisome. And in summary, what came out clearly is that whatever measures we were implementing to limit the abilities of these non-state actors to perpetrate these acts, unfortunately, was not as successful as we would have wanted it to be. To put it in context, over a period of 1 year, these groups have spread beyond where they were at the beginning of the year, as an example.
Why? I mean, and I'm asking why, because as if you know the coordination of this event, but I'm just bothered. That's why I raised the question, why? If you could put any reason to, there was an increase in abduction and fatality rate in Q4. We had abduction rate of 1,640 incidents with fatalities of 2,700, higher than Q3. Why? Is there any reason behind it?
Politics, sadly.
Oh.
And then the
campaign started around.
Campaign started. Then sadly, to the effects of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, which affected commodities, and then of course the inflation that we saw, all of that exacerbated the insecurity, the drivers of insecurity within the country. Don't forget that the multidimensional poverty index that was released indicated about 133 million Nigerians were within that poverty cycle. So that means all these threat elements that we're discussing would find it easy to recruit from within this 133 million persons. So the triggers include issues around socio-economic conditions of the people, climate change, and then several other components, sadly. One thing that is also, I think, important to mention is the approach by the federal government. The approach is mainly military, so kinetic force is the main approach that we've been seeing. And sadly, this type of insecurity challenges require a little bit more than kinetic force.
We're due for a break, though. But looking at the figures and the map that that came out of your report, the northwest region of the country has a major problem of abductions. Zamfara having the biggest numbers, 277 in 1 year, followed by Sokoto 154, and Kaduna coming third, 111, Katsina 57, FCT 24, and you go to Ondo with 10, Kebbi 10, Anambra 8, Cross River 5, Plateau 5, Benue 5. That is a progression of that of the figures. But we'll take a break now. But when we return, I'd like you to give us a sense of what we need to do ahead of the election, which is just 10 or 11 days away. If any of the authorities within the security circle are watching tonight, what we should focus our attention on, which of these states are the hotbeds of possible violence, and based on your threat analysis that you have done, so that Nigerians can be able to have an education around how to protect themselves and how to stay safe. Stay with me, Dr. Kabiru-Adamu. We'll be right back after this commercial break, everyone. Thank you so much. Dr. Kabiru-Adamu is the Executive Director of Beacon Intel Company, a security outfit. He's also Channels Television election security consultant. Thank you so much indeed, Doc, for joining us tonight.
My pleasure.
At least about nothing less than 10 military operations that we've seen across the country. Operation Aiding Kai, Operation Enduring Peace, Operation Adering Daji, Operation Thunderstrike, Operation White Stroke, Operation White Punch, Operation Mesa, Operation Flush Out, Operation Delta Save, Operation Golden Dawn, Operation Awase, across the country. The military have their hands full. Give us a sense of your mapping of the hotbeds ahead of this election.
So we use a criteria, including, for instance, court rulings, how contentious were the court ruling in a particular state. I'll give you an example, Yobe State with the recent court ruling. And then we also use the incumbency factor. Is the particular election in question, is the incumbent going to run again, or has his term expired? He's not going to run. Every time the incumbent is not running, the space is open and you see more contestants. But the most important factor is the existence of non-state armed groups. We give a value higher than the other criteria. So on the basis of that, places like Borno, where the non-state armed groups are active, Kaduna, Niger State, to an extent Taraba, have featured prominently in terms of the states with high threat levels. Zamfara State, if I didn't mention Zamfara, Katsina is also featuring high. The other one is the incorporation of non-state individuals or groups into this state apparatus of security. So as an example, where you have youth gangs or unionized transport workers, that's the case of most of the states in the southwest, where an association such as the National Union of Route Transport Workers have been incorporated into the security structure of some of the political parties in those locations. Now in the past, we know that these groups have used weapons to exercise certain influence, and we are likely to see that. So some states in the southwest are featuring prominently in terms of high threat levels. Lagos is one of them.
Yeah. Have you seen the recent violence that we've seen? Lagos, Rivers.
Rivers State is featuring prominently as a state that is likely to feature in terms of both during election and post-election violence. So in other words, we use a criteria. The difference between our threat assessment and the one that I've seen published is that ours is parallel. Ours is not static. Threat and risk are transient. And so we have a collection capability that allows us to constantly update our risk level. As an example, when the court ruling came out in Yobe, we immediately changed our risk levels. So each of these criteria that I've mentioned to you have values. And
it's dynamic too, so
exactly.
As things unfold. Just about two more questions so that we can wrap up. And I like, most importantly, because on this program, I'm very much concerned about my viewers. A lot of them who are politically savvy and are politically they're interested in politics, and so they'll be going out on election day. And I will seek your kind indulgence for a free security advice for them. You've mentioned a few states that we need to look out for. Apart from asking what government should be doing, is also what citizens should be doing. If you're advising them, what can they look out for? What should they be looking out for on election day? Where should they be in that regard?
So time would not allow me to go into the full details of security management at the individual, corporate level, and then of course at the national level. But the good thing is, just 3 days ago, we conducted a webinar. And that was the topic of that webinar. Now, the recording of that webinar is on our website and our social media platform. So anyone listening should go there. I wasn't the only one. I was there with Tanwa Ashiru, with Samson Itodo, and with Hamza Lawal of Connected Development. So a lot of information regarding the elections and security management. But some of the tips that I can give. Number one is to download an app called Citizens 8. It's an app that helps citizens to manage security concerns. Number two is what we call the mantra of security. It has three components. Be aware, and then once you're aware, anticipate. And then once you anticipate, you take mitigation measures. So what do these three things mean? In other words, keep yourself informed. Do not assume, for instance, that you are in an environment where there are no risks. There is no part of Nigeria. The 774 local governments of Nigeria each have component risks in them. So you need to be aware of that. Yeah. This platform will not allow me to go into
absolutely, because there's one very important question, is a recommendation. You've given this report, and we have on our hands a very, very critical election. What are your recommendations?
Number one recommendation goes to INEC. INEC has the platform called ICSES, like I mentioned. We haven't seen enough of that platform being active at the state and local government level. When that ad hoc committee was set up, it was envisioned to be active at both the federal, the state, and local government level. I know that last year the Inspector General of Police, Alkali Baba, issued a circular, a public circular directing all the commissioners of police at the state level to activate that platform. Now, what that platform would do, it's meant to be a meeting point for different persons within the community. All of these threat elements that we're discussing, they are not ghosts. They exist within us. So when you activate such a platform, you are able to gather information on who is doing what, why are they doing it, and then hopefully you put in place mitigation measures so that you are able to reduce the tension within the country. So that's the number one recommendation. Number two, I mentioned it earlier on, we need to see that election management plan. In the 2019 elections, the voter turnout was 34%. We need to raise the confidence of the voters, and one of the best ways to do that is to show Nigerians what mechanism is in place to manage these insecurity challenges, and that mechanism is an election risk management plan. So I'm hoping that the Office of the National Security Advisor, that is the co-chair of this ICSES, would bring out such an election risk management plan and show to Nigerians that these are the measures that would be put in place to mitigate the risk that we currently have in the country. Number three is all stakeholders, civil society organizations as an example. I think we need to demand, especially from INEC, what are the key performance indicators, the terms of reference of the members of ICSES. Why, as an example, do we have EFCC? Why do we have ICPC within ICSES? I know the answer as an example, but how am I going to hold them to account? Their terms of reference, their key performance indicators, so that as a journalist, when you are doing election reporting, you are able to say, when you see vote buying, which agency, which organization. And then lastly, I think each and every one of us need to hold everyone involved in the electoral process, because I realize that INEC is not the only one involved. 1,500 Nigerians are going to serve as staff to INEC. Some of them ad hoc, others are permanent staff. So we need to hold them to account. If you know that, for instance, any one of these 1,500 is partisan, this is the time for you to speak.
To speak up.
Yeah, you shouldn't wait. And we know these things. All of us have a level of responsibility beyond what INEC, as an example, and the security organizations would do.
Valuable contributions that you have made on this program tonight. Dr. Kabiru-Adamu, thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me.
I appreciate your time tonight. Well, it's Valentine's Day. I don't know what you want to do with your evening, but I hope that you enjoy it with your loved ones. Thank you so much indeed. Yes, I try my best. Thank you so much indeed. Dr. Kabiru-Adamu, Channels Television's election security consultant and the executive director of Beacon Consulting. Thank you so much indeed.
Thank you.